Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey, podcast listeners, Jason here. In this episode, I have the opportunity to speak with Cam Overacker. Cam is the president of Primco Limited, a floor covering distributor based in Calgary, Alberta. Like most of my Canadian friends, Cam has this amazing warmth and sincerity that permeates his personal and professional life. I always enjoy checking in with him, and I hope you enjoy listening. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSequel Distribution Software. InSequel prides themselves on their rapid response customer support team. They maintain a very low 1 customer support person per 20 user ratio. Now, I have a long history with this company. I met the lead developer several years ago when he attended my inventory management seminar. He didn't just attend, he absorbed the content. Every couple of years, I head up to their Michigan headquarters to talk about product enhancements and see what they're up to. I always come away impressed. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSequel Distribution Software at www.insequel.com. That's INXSQL.com. All right, Cam. Hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. Good to be here.
Hey, man. Tell us a little bit about how you got in the business. I know you're at least a second generation. I don't know, you maybe a third, but a second generation owner at least. How did you get dragged into the distribution business?
Well, it's kind of like you said, it's something that I've been involved with my whole life, and the ability to join the family business and the pride that was there, working with my father and for my father and being involved in the family business was definitely something that as a young lad I didn't think was necessarily there, but as I grew older and more mature, definitely was something that I found myself earning towards getting involved with.
Any idea when that turning point was? I mean, for me, it was probably my first or second year at school, college. When did you hit that moment where you said, you know what, I think I'm going to go ahead and enter the family business. I'm going to go down this path.
Well, actually, I can remember the exact moment that something fell out of the sky and hit me on the head, and it might have been a coconut because it was actually on my honeymoon when I was floating around the pool with my wife. We were enjoying a nice cocktail in Maui, and that was kind of the point where I first had the discussion with her that I wanted to possibly look at getting back into the family business. And that was, the point that I started to go down that road because I knew I'd have to earn my way back into the family business as well.
Now, I assume that you were in another profession or another job than prior to that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'd done my duty in the oil and gas pipeline, working manual labor jobs, we'll call it. I was known as the hand excavator on most of the crews that I had because I could dig a good hole really quick. I had a landscape company that I looked after people's yards, and then actually worked in a steel fabrication shop at the same time as the landscape company, and ran a steel break where we manufactured all kinds of steel and aluminum type products for consumer use. Did that for about 2 years as well.
Interesting. I'm always fascinated when I talk to people about what they did transitioning into that family business. I was a second generationer as well, went away for a year, went off and taught English overseas for a year just to kind of see if I could actually make it out there. If the family would not have me, then I could actually support myself. But were any of the things, in these professions right before you jumped into the family business, did you bring anything with you that you can, look back and say, that was something I learned outside and I brought with me along that transition?
Well, I think some of it similar to you, where you took the year to travel and teach English and stuff like that. I traveled, I had an earning to want to travel to South Pacific. I worked for the company prior to in the warehouse and order desk when I was young and just out of college. And then I actually started up, where I took and traveled to South Pacific. And I refer to it as the University of Life, where, I wasn't getting a classroom education, but the experience of spending 9 months, in and around the South Pacific, backpacking, the basic survival skills of looking after yourself and making sure you had a roof over your head at night and stuff was definitely something that, brought some skills. And actually, in that, one thing I did was I worked This was back probably in 1991, 92, where I worked at a souvenir factory down in Redfern, Australia, which is basically the heart of downtown Sydney, Australia. Sydney had got the bid for the 2000 Olympics, and I was actually, no better description, working in a sweatshop with making souvenir pins for the 2000 Sydney Olympics back in like 1992, 93. So it was definitely, and just the multiculturalism of that, working in that environment and stuff with people from all over the world, different religious backgrounds, different cultural, spiritual beliefs and stuff like that really kind of helped round out the boy from the suburbs in Western Canada to understand how big the world truly is and how small the place you come from really is.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I had that very similar experience, and kind of along that same vein, I know that as you start to look at what would the next generation look like, now I know that your kids are not, well, they're getting closer. I mean, to that certain age, when they start to make a decision around that. But one of the things I'm asked often, especially with owners that their kids are starting into the business and maybe they've spent summers and whatnot, very similar to the way you did and I did. Is it important to send them away from the company? Is it important to have that point of transition where they go do something else? Or do you have them just come right out of education right into that family business? What do you think about that?
Well, I've got different philosophies on that. We deal with companies that say that if there's a desire for someone within the family to be in the business, you've got to be of a certain age and you have to have a degree or a diploma from a post-secondary school and stuff. And I guess from my standpoint, I don't have a post-secondary degree. I spent a couple of years in college, but I don't have an actual degree to back it up. My father, quit school in grade 11, so he doesn't even have a high school diploma, and yet he was very successful in setting the company up for what it is. So I feel a little hypocritical asking for someone to have a post-secondary degree to come and work for the company. And then, in regards to age, I think people mature at different ages. I took a big step in the maturity world in and around the 22, 23 years old. That was at the point where I started to get back into it. But I know that different people develop maturity at a different age. And I don't think maturity has anything to do with age, but a lot to do with personal experience. And that's where, I look at it and say, what I encourage with my kids, and they're of the age where they're starting to work for the company and getting involved or wanting to get involved. And what I say is that if you've got a desire to travel the world or go see what this big globe is all about, then before coming to work for the company, by all means, take the time to experience that. Don't be too rushed to get into a career necessarily at a young age. They're in their early 20s, and my youngest is 17. They've got lots of years ahead of them and stuff. So there's no really strong rule of thumb that I have necessarily, but just from a standpoint of how could I give some advice to others getting in a family business, it's almost like, things happen that the time is right. And that time is a different time for many different individuals, right?
Right, absolutely. That there really isn't a perfect formula. But I do agree with you. I would absolutely encourage people before they get that spouse and a mortgage and a few other expensive payments. Why don't you go see the world, before you get settled down, and where it becomes so much more difficult to do it. Do it at an age when you can. Now, once you came into the business and you made this a full-time career, what were some of those challenges that you faced in that transition period?
I guess probably the biggest challenge was you always felt like you were always being measured, and that was something that I found challenging. That because you were in the family business, that everybody expected you to be perfect, never being able to kind of let your hair down and have a little fun and stuff like that. It almost felt like whether you were working, whether you were at the staff Christmas party, you were wherever you were and stuff, it was always that challenge to say and do the right thing, I guess, from that standpoint. And, that's a big belief that I have. But it was challenging in that regard, that you felt like everybody was expecting perfection. And I guess, once I got a little older, I learned to understand that that's not the way people were thinking about you. And those that were probably didn't have good intentions for the relationship they had with you anyway. So that's the biggest thing, is just trying to be hard on yourself, but not too hard where it takes away from your personal enjoyment of the ride too, right?
Right, absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, I can recall a very similar feeling to that, and obviously self-imposed. It was really trapped between my two ears more than anything. But I think there is a certain pressure as you move into these organizations, and people do look at you as, are you going to be able to lead this organization in the future, and is my job safe in the future? Because let's face it, in a lot of the companies, and I would say that your company especially, there's a lot of longevity. There's a whole lot of folks that have a lot of years put in, and they have to trust that they are being put into good hands.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that our company has a long history of, is tenure of employees, where, you have people that are 20 and 30 plus year employees, and there's lots of them within our company. And with those employees, things happen, and some will go and some will stay. And the ones that stay, they have a desire to want to continue to grow the company with you. And those who leave, no worse on them, but sometimes you just come to a point where things have got to move on in a positive direction, and sometimes that does happen.
It's sad. I do look back over my career at different people that, for one reason or another, had to move on from the organization. They'd been with, my father's organization for a long time. And then when my brother and I were coming into that business, that people just really couldn't make that transition, and they couldn't move forward with some of the new initiatives and technology, culture. I mean, things change in these organizations from generation to generation.
Yeah, for sure. That would be the other challenge that exists, is you're coming in, you're generally younger, you haven't been with the company as many years, and that transition from that old guard, as I call it, versus the new up and coming thoughts and ideas and stuff like that. It's sometimes people just can't make that transition, and there's got to come a point where you stand up for what you believe in, though, because when it comes down to it, the success of the company or failure of the company in the future is going to be based on the decisions you make. And if you feel that a decision needs to be made and that old guard isn't as supportive as they could be or should be, then you've got to go ahead and make those decisions anyways. And the biggest thing is to surround yourself with good people and ensure that those people have your back, and you have their back. And I think that's what creates winning culture with moving forward, transitioning from one generation to the next.
I know we spoke about that a little earlier, that surrounding yourself with the best people. I mean, I think you're absolutely correct. As I get older, I do see sometimes the wisdom of my father and his management philosophy and his leadership philosophy, surrounding himself with the very best people he possibly could. And I see my younger brother doing the same thing. How did you find those people, and how did you cultivate those relationships? I mean, obviously those aren't the same people that were surrounding your father. How did you find those folks, and how did you recruit them?
Well, I think what you find is that there's a lot of them that are within your organization, and there's some who you have to just do your due diligence and get on board. With regards to, I've had a personal coach that has gave me a lot of advice in regards to just the ability to try and read people and stuff. And one of the biggest sets of advice that she gave me was, you've got to learn to trust your gut, and that your gut is right more often than you give it credit for, and you've got to start trusting that. And she said your ability to read people is very good, and you've got to trust what you're reading is right and stuff like that. And like I said earlier, just with regards to it, kind of has got to get away from the fact of how long an employee's been with you, because sometimes those employees aren't the right people for the team, the new generation, the new direction and stuff like that. And you have to have the courage to recognize that and take that leap, where we've had to do it several times since I've taken over here, that we've had to move on from existing relationships that were there before. And having the courage to move on from those is, it's a challenging thing, but surrounding yourself with that good core of people around you helps make those decisions, successful moving forward.
Something you said about, you've had this personal coach, and if I could take a couple of minutes, I just want to ask a couple of questions, some thoughts around this, because I find that it's younger leaders and younger owners of businesses that are seeking out this outside coaching. And I mean, I don't think this is something that your father or my father would have seen, they would have looked for as a personal coach to help them, but it seems to be getting much more prevalent. Could you talk about your experience just a little bit around this person?
Yeah, it's a lady that we engaged And it came from a personal contact that had done some work, a guy who's an HR guy at an oil and gas company in downtown Calgary, and he'd utilized her services. And through the days of coaching baseball together, he listened to my concerns and my issues that I had and stuff, and really said that, seeking out someone like Melinda was going to be something that would be good for me moving forward and stuff like that. And we really engaged her. She's a professional with regards to working with disc profiles of people and stuff like that. And
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
engaged that and just started to move down. And, I'd like to say we've got a fairly good, close personal relationship now where she's a mentor to me more than a coach, I guess you'd say. And just trusting those people. And again, like I said, surrounding yourself with different people. My knowledge and how I got to know you down in Colorado Springs that one year,
Yeah.
and the help that you've gave me along the way and stuff like that. And just the willingness to want to learn from people from all different cultures, all different areas of the world, different businesses, and just being open to wanting to know that you can learn something new every day and challenging yourself to do so.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Is that really it tends to be the journey, not the destination. In these,
Absolutely.
I have a coach that I work with, and most of the really successful business leaders I know have at one point in their career, if not continually, have an outside advisor. Maybe it's in the form of a small advisory board, or maybe it's an individual coach, but that outside of opinion just really tends to stimulate different thought and different ideas.
Yeah, I've really noticed that. And like I say, it can come from someone who's like Melinda, who was in the world of disc and, kind of reading people and things like that. And
Mhm.
the business knowledge that she brought from working with leaders in multinational, multi-million dollar oil companies and things like that. And the experiences she'd learned on that side with yourself, with that family distribution background that you had, and
Mhm.
just really kind of surrounding yourself with my friend Dion, who I coached baseball with, and we had a passion and kids that were the same age, and challenging ourselves to become better coaches. And he's an HR professional, so he always had that HR spin on everything that happened, whether it was in business or at the Ball Diamond, one or the other. Just the different sales professionals as well too that helped teach me about that side. So I really looked at it as a wheel of surrounding yourself with people that had different strengths. And it wasn't something I set out to do, but it was something that once I put it down on paper one day as to, who do I have around me that can help make me a better individual, which makes me a better leader and a better person in general. I really started to notice that I had just naturally diversified the group of people around me. Not a large group, but the group of people around me all had different strengths that they brought to the table, which helped make me who I am today.
Taking a little bit different tact here, what's if you could kind of recall back here, and maybe it's something that's been recent or a few years back, is the biggest professional challenge that you had to overcome. What was the biggest struggle, if you don't mind sharing some of that? That you took on, and now you're hopefully seeing the other side of that.
For sure. I guess, economic conditions aside, I guess, being able to prepare and be nimble enough that you can react to the changing economic conditions, the recessions that are cyclical, that happen on a cyclical basis. You can almost, the economists will tell you, you can predict them, you can see that they're going to come. The only thing about a recession is once it goes the other way, that there will be another recession. It's just a matter of when. And kind of preparing yourself and being knowledgeable enough to know when they're coming. Be able to tighten things up as much as possible to get through those times and stuff. And I would say, other than that, the biggest challenge is just on the people side of things with regards to, again, just continually upgrading and surrounding yourself with a quality team of people that work for the business, for their benefit and for yours, just being as tight as possible to drive results, and not just for the business, but for them personally as well. That's the biggest challenge, is that there always seems to be something that somebody needs or wants or desires and things like that. Just the people side of things.
You've mentioned the disc profile a couple of times now.
Yeah.
Maybe if you wouldn't mind just telling people what it is, and then maybe how you utilize it in your organization.
Well, it's a psychological profile, I guess you'd say, that it grades people into just by simple questionnaires where you rank, what's important to you, what's not important. Funny thing is it's not always the questionnaire that they ask is not always around business itself, but just how you would react or what's important to you and things like that. And then it basically spits out a profile that as you take it home and you read it to your spouse, they just go, uh-huh, yep, that's you.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
is
yeah.
definitely you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's amazingly powerful that I found as to how it can, through answering, very short, probably I'd say a 10 to 15-minute questionnaire, how it spits out and really just tells you who you are. And it was scary the first time I took it. I thought to myself, I thought I failed because I thought, there's that typical stereotypical salesperson that everybody thinks they are or they should be and stuff like that. And my results came back and I, took about 10 minutes to just, as I was sitting there in the session I was in, just thinking to myself, you failed, you failed, you failed. And then the light bulb
Yeah.
went off for me that said, no, you didn't fail. It's just, it's who you are. And,
Yeah.
recognizing that it's not about working on your weaknesses, it's about realizing what your weaknesses are and also recognizing what your strengths are and playing to your strengths and surrounding yourself with people that can kind of step up and help you out with your weaknesses, not help you but can carry on a conversation with the weaknesses that possibly come up. And it really just
Yeah.
grades you into 4 different quadrants that a compliant, a dominant style, which are both task and result related, the other 2 quadrants that are more people related.
Does everyone in your organization take this test?
We have implemented the last couple of years. We started with our management and leadership team. And the first time we did it, we had, the old school, the old regime was there, my father, his lieutenants, all that kind of stuff. And then we had the new force that was coming up and stuff like that. We got in a big ballroom and Melinda put on this session of, and really what she does is she'll take my profile as the president and she'll discuss and really let people understand who I am and how to best approach me. And when I walk by you and don't say good morning, it's not that I don't want to wish you a good morning, but I'm a double task oriented person. So I'm walking in the office not thinking about what everybody did on the weekend, but I'm thinking, what's the tasks that I have at hand today that need to get done type thing. And in the same regard, her helping me realize that when that happens, that I can offend people by just not taking the time to say hello and how was your weekend and all that kind of stuff. So
Interesting. No,
yeah,
no, it's fascinating. I mean, I'm glad you said that it absolutely scared you to death when you first got your results because
yeah,
I had the same experience, Cam. It just, I had this psychologist and I took a different exam. It was a different test, but of the same genre. And I'll tell you, I mean, I'm listening to this psychologist going, how did you figure that one out? That just got me.
And to answer your question, Jay, yes, we do administer it to all. We started out doing it to all sales staff, and then I've recently just
Yeah,
said that, you know what, guys, for the cost of putting the session on and stuff like that, I think it's good that everybody. So we try and make it a policy that everybody that starts with us will have a disc profile done. So at least everybody around you learn a little bit about yourself, but everybody around you
sure.
knows, well, if I want to get the most out of talking to Cam, this is the best way for me to approach him. And not, I'm just using me as an example, but
Right.
it also teaches you if you're a sales rep and you walk into an account that, their desk is ultra clean and, they're kind of standoffish, they're not leaning in for the handshake or giving the big hug. Hey, nice to meet you the first time. And they're laying the big hug on you and stuff. So there's lots of body language signs that kind of tell you where in the quadrant and the world they live and teaches you as a salesperson to not sell the way you want to be sold yourself, but to try and sell and or deal with people on their turf, not necessarily on yours. And too many times we think that, if I'm a guy who loves statistics, I think that, everybody should love statistics. So when I go in and do a presentation, I start talking numbers versus, they want conversation. They want to know about your weekend. They want to have small talk before they get going and stuff like that. If you jump right to the show, you may not get the reaction that you're hoping for or looking for because you're not on their terms. And it's not the be all end all, but it's kind of it's a checkpoint before you hire somebody that says, are they the type of person that's going to, fit well within the team?
It's a great explanation of use. And for me, when I think about utilizing those kinds of personality profiles and that kind of information as you're bringing someone into the organization, you can help guide their career as well, and you can help mentor them into the best fit for them.
Yeah.
And I've known that we've tried to push people into directions that were never going to fit for them. But again, we didn't have the benefit of that profiling. And so ultimately we lost some really great people because we didn't take that time. So I think that's a great use of that. So one quick piece of advice, for those, maybe they're transitioning into their business, or maybe they're just a young person in distribution. What would you tell them to do to really better their career?
The biggest thing is to never think you know it all. Always be humble and willing to learn from anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter the status, the letters behind your business card, the degree you have or don't have, where you come from, the color of skin, your beliefs, anything like that. I think that if you wake up every day just thinking that there's something I can learn from somebody today, and that could be at any level of an organization, that could be from a homeless guy you walk by in the street and stuff like that. You can always learn something from somebody. I think that would be one piece of advice, personal and, business, because
Sure.
I have a very difficult time, when people say, business should be business and personal should be personal. I guess in a family business, it's hard to distinguish between those two areas, because work is family and family is family, and it's really hard. So to me, I kind of put them all together and just say, the way I live my life at home is the way I live my life in the business world as well. I always try and learn from people. There's never a shortage of, listening to a podcast such as this, listening to a TED Talks, but constantly always look for ways that you can better yourself. And I think if you lead by example with that those around you will do the same. And the more, people live that philosophy, the stronger your team becomes. And the stronger your team is, the stronger your business becomes.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.